Hi, I'm Jenny Granberry, and I'm an artist and educator from Austin, Texas. And I love watercolor. I like painting people, I like painting other things. I just kind of love it all, and I really love sharing all of that with fun people like you. So, if this sounds like a good time, I'd love to see you in my workshop.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you can hear us and see us okay, you already know the drill. Type llama in the chat or let us know where you're viewing from, just like how some of you did already in the chat. Hi, Sam from Canada. Llama, Ken, hi, Jan. Hi from Ottawa, looking forward to a very unusual subject. I totally agree. It's going to be super exciting. Nova Scotia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I really wish Thunderbat was a real place. um, okay, you guys are super active in the chat already, so that should be good. I think we can begin. So, hello, everyone. I'm Kathleen. I'm with Etchr. I'll be your studio host for today. And for those who are new with Etchr, we are an art learning platform who works with art teachers from all across the globe. And today's free demo is brought to you by a cheery and lovely educator and artist from Texas. She's Jenny Granberry. And this works as a preview for her 90-minute class, which I'll let her talk about in just a minute, but I'll drop that link in the chat in case you're interested to take a peek already. So before we begin, if you have any questions, please type them in all capital letters, just like this in the chat. And if you're going to be following along today, we also have a private Facebook group open to anyone making art-related content. To both are free and paid classes, rather. So yeah, I'll drop that link in the Facebook group and other links that you might find useful. So without further ado, Jenny, can you tell us what you'll be doing today and how that connects to your Etchr class?
All right. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm Jenny Granberry, and today you're going to watch me get a skull painting off to a really fun watercolory start using a wet-on-wet technique. So, all of that like blooming and blending, that the thing we all love about watercolor. We're going to start off our painting that way. And then in the 90-minute class, we're going to kind of refine it, take all that craziness, and make something that has a bit more structure to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. So that's before and after. Yeah. And a few other things I've done, some other skull studies, and yeah, one in color as well. So great subject that I like to work with. And then some colored pencil work in the Etchr accordion sketchbook, which I really loved. So here you see me, I've got my watercolors laid out. I've got my Etchr Perfect sketchbook. It's cold press paper. And I am testing out my colors. So you can see there's a few little swatches on the side, seeing kind of what I liked together. And then the colors that I have chosen are the quinacridone gold. This one right here is quinacridone red light. And then here in a second, you'll see me swatch out cobalt teal. So you'll probably notice that is a primary color palette, and that's just a great palette to use when you're not quite sure what colors will look good together. If you pick some kind of red, yellow, and blue, you'll get kind of a full rainbow kind of spectrum. But I kind of chose the funnest red, yellow, and blue by going with a color that kind of looks like hot pink and going with this bright teal. And I always like a warm yellow because it's going to make pretty orangey shades with the with any of my warm red choices. I wanted also to choose a color that had some granulation in it. So that would be the cobalt teal, and that's a color that just offers a lot of texture and kind of travels in the watercolor a little bit differently than the red and the yellow do. The red and the yellow are going to be real smooth and they travel really easily. They're very floaty pigments. But then that cobalt teal doesn't move. You can see there, it doesn't kind of spread out as far. And instead it has those chunky pigments that are going to offer just a really interesting moment within all of that kind of watercolory goodness that we have. And hello, Lynn. Yeah, I remember you from class last summer, I think.
That's just amazing. I can see how you've been really well as an educator, so that's cool.
Yeah, I like talking about all of this stuff, and in a class, you know, typically people don't leave, and so it's like, ha ha ha, now you'll have to listen to me talk for hours at a time. So a really key part of this whole wet on wet thing, as you might gather, it requires a lot of wet, a lot of water. And in general, a thing I notice in a lot of the classes I teach where people are kind of first beginning their watercolor journey is people maybe are a little timid and don't use enough moisture. And that is moisture, water, or paint, or water and paint. And so you want to be sure that you're using plenty of water. The whole kind of point of this wet on wet step is we want the colors to spread out into really exciting kind of tie-dye psychedelic looking stuff. And the paint can't travel if there's not enough moisture. So I laid down a bit of water just on its own to get me started. And then I started with the yellow and just really going in there with a generous amount of water. And in this first bit, the colors are going to be kind of pale. And, you know, I think that fits the whole general watercolor wisdom of working from light to dark. And so just kind of my main goal at this point is to just get moisture out over the entire surface. So what's really important to do is have a lot of water, first off, so don't forget that point. But also you want to be working on quality paper, and you want to be working on, you know, of course, watercolor paper, paper made specifically for watercolor. I prefer cold press. And then this is in the Etchr Perfect sketchbook, which has delightful paper to work on. But also the other Etchr sketchbook, the cold press one with the white canvas cover. This works really well on that one also. So you can see me there. I'm kind of wetting out a nice kind of rounded, you know, painterly kind of edge there. So it's nice to have, you know, give yourself like a little border. You could tape it if you want it to be perfectly neat and tidy, but I kind of like the look of a kind of painted edge. So now I'm going in with a little bit more intense color. And I'm kind of, you can see me kind of observing the edge of the skull right there. You know, looking at that black and white photo next to it, you'll see that I am kind of avoiding the very lightest areas. And yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of bleed of the, you know, wet on wet kind of thing. And what I like about this strategy is that you have to let go of control a little bit, which I think kind of forces us to be a little bit more spontaneous with our painting. And I think that's a really great way to start an art piece, is to start from a place of intuition, to start from a place of fun, you know, just the joy of watching the paint do its crazy thing. And also like kind of letting back on, you know, sometimes you can just get so like white knuckle, you know, gripping that brush to death. You're so scared to make a mistake. But if you start with this kind of strategy where you know you can't control it, it almost kind of like you let go of perfectionism a little bit. And in the 90-minute class, you know, when we come back at this with a little bit more of a controlled hand with it to build that structure, I think that it's really nice to still have a sense of confidence working with it, you know, and still, even though we are coming at that painting with more, I don't know, precision, we still want to have a sense of looseness and playfulness with it. So I'm going in here and I've added some red in where the values are kind of darker. So this ends up being a bit of a value study. You know, it's not completely random tie-dye kind of thing. We're still kind of putting our colors stronger where they are darker in the photo. And so I kind of think of the yellow as being the lightest value because yellow is kind of perceived as a lighter color. And then the kind of pink or red kind of as a middle tone. And when I go in and add the blue, I kind of put that in the darker moments. But see, letting that color just bleed out like that is so nice. Another thing that is nice to have in this situation is a brush that is soft and absorbent. So of course you want a brush that can carry a lot of moisture in it, so that way you can keep the wet on wet thing going. But you also want a brush that is soft. You know, we've probably all overworked our paper before, and that is going to be a lot of friction on a wet surface. You know, when our watercolor paper is wet, it can be a little bit more susceptible to, you know, kind of giving out or pilling at from friction. So you want to have a soft brush so that there is a softer touch to it. There's less friction on it, less likely to give out. Also, too, if you're using enough moisture on there, you know, your paint is kind of floating on the surface instead of being scrubbed on the surface. The color right there, well, it's kind of all mixed together now, but that is a cobalt teal watercolor. And you see me clean out my brush. You saw how the colors kind of started mixing together a little too much. I went and cleaned my brush and pulled out fresh paint there so that the colors, you know, a little bit of the colors mingling together is fine. But, you know, if you keep on mixing color and mixing color a little too much, everything's going to turn brown. Yeah, look how fabulous that looks. Just kind of just crawling out. I mean, that is the fun of watercolor right there. And what's also cool about this is if I were to sit down and do this exact thing a second time, it wouldn't look the same. Like everything's going to have this kind of bit of randomness to it. So you can see in the parts of the skull that are the darkest, I'm applying the blue like that. And when you have a cool moment like this, you know, like where the paint's kind of bleeding out a really interesting way, it's really best to leave it alone. The more you kind of fiddle around with the colors, the more the kind of bleedy blendiness kind of goes away. So when you've got a good thing, leave it alone. Yeah, that's always the hardest part, having some restraint. And
Yeah,
don't
and
be
someone says,
oh
sorry,
what?
someone says in the chat, very different approach. We totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's one that like it's challenging. Like psychologically, it really asks you to be a flexible person. It asks you to problem solve, be
Yeah.
able to roll with the punches. Like it really is. I don't know. I get like really excited about this kind of stuff because it's asking you to be like a better person in a way, like somebody who's like, wow, that's not what I expected. I'm going to keep painting and keep having fun with all of this unexpected kind of stuff. And I think that that is, I don't know, really magical. These are watercolor paints. And yeah, that half-inch silver black velvet oval wash is my favorite at the moment. I have a slightly smaller oval wash as well, but a round brush would also work beautifully. Yeah, don't be afraid for these colors, you know, to get really vibrant. You know, lean into the craziness of this. You know, it's like, well, skulls are white, you know, white's a light color. You know, when you really start looking at all the values here, we actually have a lot of midtones. But also, if we don't have that perfect pristine white, well, what do we have instead? We have rainbow goodness. I'm not complaining about that. Like that's pretty exciting if you ask me. So, you know, just don't get too concerned that it's going too crazy. I think that it's more fun this way. If we wanted to have a very standard skull, we would just skip this first part. We want craziness. Deep getting that color. And I was trying to go for a nice balance of red, yellow, and blue here. So not having too much of one or the other. Although I will probably, I mean, I do know. I definitely favor pink. Okay, so here I am using a paper towel to kind of contain that edge. See how the water is kind of beating up at the edge there? Just when things are starting to get too puddly, like if there is actually standing water on it in a puddle, I might take a little corner of a paper towel to kind of fix that. I'm also adding just plain water right here in the lightest part of the skull. And what that's going to do is it's going to push the semi-dried paint kind of out of the way, and it's going to create, a background or a bloom. And it will also lighten up the color there. So yeah, putting
I
a
noticed
bit. Oh, what's up?
Sorry, yeah. I noticed that you associate these colors with the darkest tones, the midtones, and the lightest ones.
Yeah, just I mean, technically the red could be, dark, middle, or light.
Yeah.
But I kind of, it just intuitively makes sense that blue is the darker color. And I think that most people associate, shadows being cooler generally. So that's kind of where I kind of have, I guess, a sense of logic there. So right here, I've taken my brush and I've dried it out just a little bit, just with my paper towel, and I'm kind of scooping the moisture off of the lightest areas right there. So I can have a little bit of control here. Am I self-taught? I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts with what emphasis in painting. But I would say in terms of I don't know. I mean, I guess so technically I do have an art degree, but I would say that art feels to me in general like a self-taught journey, because it's like you yourself do it. You know what I mean? Like a teacher
Yeah.
is there to kind of set you on the right path and give you feedback. I don't know. I guess that's my thought. Answering the question way too complexly. When that's just I have an art degree. Yeah. So yeah, you can see where I've kind of scooped some of that paint off. You don't want to go too crazy with that because again, friction on the surface. We don't want to start doing that. We also don't want to start having kind of dry, like icky streakiness next to all of this nice kind of fluidy wet on wetness. So you just, you kind of scoop it out. Some of it's going to bleed back and that's totally fine. Thrown in a little, yeah, I guess quote unquote dark with that teal.
This is turning out super great for an unusual subject, as they say. Um, we rarely, like you mentioned, we usually just do it with white, white skull, and then do it black and white, I guess. But this is a fun way to pretty much change up the subject.
Yeah, yeah. I think skulls are a fun subject because there's just nice design to work with, the kind of like the eye sockets and like the weird nose hole part. It's so iconic looking that you can kind of push the boundaries and do weirder stuff with it. And you see skulls in a lot of different kind of art styles and people doing really interesting things. So it allows, I think, a lot of space to play in a way that maybe a portrait doesn't quite as much because you want to have the person looking like a person and things like that. But I think a skull gives us some interesting things to play with.
Yeah, I agree. And it totally can be like, it makes you understand how to do portraits, I guess, as well.
Hmm.
Because as long as you understand like the underlying structure of the skull, then everything just makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that always blows my mind about, thinking about skulls versus portraits is the eyes, like, there's the eye socket is so much bigger, it's such a large area than the actual eyeball. When you think
Right.
about painting portraits, it's like, oh, eyeballs, eyelashes, things like that. But actually, the eye is a much larger area. And I think the skull is a good reminder of that. So here's the delicate part of every watercolor kind of thing where it's like, don't do too much, but you still want to do enough so that it's finished. And so, just because this is intuitive and we're kind of letting things kind of go with the flow, doesn't mean that we can't respond to what is on the page, And you can see, like, I can see my hands kind of, I'm looking at things. I'm not just going crazy and throwing everything at it. I'm carefully adding new things. And so I think there's an interesting kind of marriage of being confident, being loose, being intuitive, while also still being very thoughtful with the way we're putting down our paint. And that's kind of, I think, what makes this not be quite at random. Can you use any sketchbook or paper? So you would want to use a sketchbook that has watercolor paper in it. And there she is, all finished out when we go over it with some other darker colors. So you can see go from one to the next.
Which brings me to one interesting question right here. I'll just bring us back real quickly. So we've got Sarah asking, can you tell us a little bit about how you plan to refine or add the structure to the skull during the 90-minute class?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to come at it essentially as a value study. So a value study is just a fancy way of saying working in black and white. Not necessarily black, it could be brown and white. But it's doing a monochromatic version of the skull on top of this. So normally you would do that on top of white paper. We're going to be doing it on top of psychedelic tie-dye paper. And so we'll go at it with a single color since we've already got enough colors already. And, we'll go in and kind of make the darker parts darker, and have those edges be harder. I think that because this is all the edges here are soft, right? Because it's all wet on wet. I think for a piece to truly look completed, although this looks pretty cool on its own, I think you need to have hard edges on it, especially I'm looking like in that eye socket and stuff. And so going on top with dry paint, we'll get those, or dry paper, we'll get those hard edges there. And that's what we'll do in the workshop.
Amazing. All right. And if you do have more questions, just drop them in the chat for Jenny to answer. I guess you've answered some of these questions already as we went along. But feel free to type any comments, any lovely suggestions, or not suggestions, but suggestions for future classes. Who knows? That could be. And then if you've got some, questions or queries, concerns, there was a lovely comment right here when we first started. Jenny Granberry, love you. Oh gosh,
love it. That's what I need the attention. So yes. Let's see. Wet on wet is a nightmare. So you gotta embrace it. Let this be the nightmare first layer. Then you get to solve the puzzle. You get to solve the problem you've created for yourself. But also, if you choose really fun colors, you will have a fun nightmare to work through. So you got to just lean into it. Oh, thank you.
Someone says, I'm so in for the 90-minute workshop. That is amazing. Thank you so much. And yes, it's a great way to support Jenny with her works and what she does. So you might want to consider taking a look at that. And we will be delving deeper into what we have learned today. So that 90-minute class is a step-by-step process. It's a live class. It's not going to be a simulated live like what did today. So you guys can really follow along. But if you did follow along today, you can share your works on Instagram or Facebook. So you might want to join our private Facebook group. Again, that's open to anyone doing art related to both our free content and paid classes. So if you want to share it on Facebook, you just want to use the @ and Jenny, type in Jenny Granberry, then it's either you can tag Jenny herself or her class. this demo, so that should appear. Or on Instagram, you could post your work there and tag at Jenny Granberry and use the hashtag Etchr Studio, so we can definitely see it. Or if you're too shy, you can just send Jenny a direct message. So that should work. All right, we've got more people. Your tattoos are so cool. I agree. I haven't really like noticed that, but yeah. um, I've never wanted to paint a skull, but I'm all in now. This is so cool. Oh wow, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
um, I have a new respect for the human skull. Thanks, Jenny. Fun and demo and awesome colors. Question: did you ever dip your brush in coffee?
I've dipped it in, I dipped watercolor in wine and it was a fresh glass and I drink it anyway. So
Well, it's not toxic, I hope, but
yeah. I mean, I'm
um,
still here, so
yeah. Let's see. Just to clarify, the demo portion should be completed before the 90-minute class. Is that correct, or is it necessary?
we'll do this in the 90-minute class as well. So it'll be the 90-minute class will be a complete experience on its own.
Gotcha. All right. And then we've got a lovely suggestion from Lollipop saying you can do when you finish your painting, you can draw a frame with a black pen or felt tip pen in black. Have you tried that?
Yeah, doing some pen work. And you know, if you didn't want to do the full value study, actually some line work on top of this with a pen would look really great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That should be pretty interesting. And Sam is asking, can you suggest a more muted color combination of colors for this layer of the painting?
Yes, I can because I had a second choice that I almost went with. So it's at the very beginning of the video. You see the little swatches on the side. I have found a magical combination of quinacridone. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm just pointing at my computer. It's the top one. If you look on the left side of the page, it's the top one. It's quinacridone violet and then quinacridone gold deep and then cobalt teal. And so it gives this more earthy kind of sense to it. And when the colors come together, they neutralize in a very pleasing kind of, I don't know, reminds me of the desert a little bit. But I like that it has the cobalt teal to still give it a pop and texture. So that would be my recommendation for muted colors.
Great. Oh, another interesting question. Do you sketch directly onto your watercolor paper or use tracing board to avoid hurting the paper?
So it would depend. If I was doing a like more completed art piece that's, you know, like something fancy that I'm gonna use in my portfolio, I'm gonna use some sort of transfer method so that my paper is pristine, 100% beautiful white paper with a ultra clean, light line work for me to watercolor around. Now, if I'm working in my sketchbook and I'm just painting something, you know, just on my own, hanging out, having a nice time, something that's not going to be entered in, you know, any competitions or whatever, I'll just draw it out. Because if, you know, your paper, assuming that you're keeping your drawing fairly light and using maybe like a kneaded eraser, your paper can handle maybe a little bit more than you think, but keeping your drawing very light is really, really important because when you do erase, it erases very easily.
Okay. Oh yeah, Lollipop. I did see that you've placed the idea in the chat earlier. And Jenny says that that will be a great idea. So you can try that too. So you might want to join our Facebook group as well if you have tried that. Then you could share us how it turned out. And I forgot to mention that if you are not going to be able to attend the 90-minute class, a recording will be available shortly. So no worries if with the time zone concerns, then that should be totally fine. You can have the recording afterwards. So um, let's see. Amazing. Thank you. All right. So I guess I'm not seeing any more questions. I think the camera up then. Okay, so thank you so much, Jenny, for that lovely demonstration. I hope you enjoyed your time with Etchr Studio. And this amazing preview is jam-packed with information already, but so I'm pretty excited what more Jenny can offer in the 90-minute class. Again, I'm going to be dropping that link in the chat. Um, All right. So I hope you enjoyed, everyone. And we do these live demos a couple of times a week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you watched today, make sure to click the like video below. And also, we've got a survey form so that you can let us know how amazing Jenny has been today. How if you want her to be back for more classes, let us know what you want her to teach. Oh, we got one more question right here. Okay, hold on. How do we keep the paper wet enough for wet on wet? Oh,
So use an absorbent brush, maybe even a slightly like a larger brush, and then just keep at it, like just brush to the water, to the paint, like just kind of keep going with it. It should be, your page should stay wet long enough, as long as you are working with some pep in your step, some purpose to it. Don't like leave and go text all your friends and come back. It'll dry by then. And you're just constantly adding more and more. It should stay wet the whole time, especially if you're using a watercolor paper that's holding the moisture like it ought to.
yeah. And we've got, I guess we can entertain more questions right here.
Sure.
Kimberly's asking about core. Is it granulating paints? I guess you mentioned earlier there was one granulating
Yes.
paints.
Mhm.
Should they be avoided with this style
No.
or?
You should. Granulation is super cool with this, because we're here like really playing with color and texture. So my preference is to pick one granulating color so that way it's not competing. But I mean, you could do them all granulating. So my red and my yellow are smooth, non-granulating colors, staining colors, and then I have the teal, and that's my textural moment. So definitely include some texture. It's really fun.
Amazing. Okay. There was this nice comment. I hope Etchr invites Jenny again to teach watercolor portrait. That would be interesting. So,
Oh,
yeah, just type in your lovely comments in the survey form that I've jumped in earlier. Love Jenny's classes. Would love to see more from her with Etchr. You guys are super appreciative.
yeah. It's like, all right, who do I need to send $5 to?
Yeah, I guess this will be super fun then. All right. So speaking of earlier, I was wrapping up, but we've got an open art studio coming up soon. That's on April 24th, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So you might want to check out our Facebook group. So this is open to anyone. This is free again. So if you want to learn more about, or if you want to join and just do this technique, what you've learned today with Jenny, you can share that with during our open art studio. So no pressure with turning on your cameras or what. So it's just a fun and relaxed session for everyone. And let's see. Any final thoughts before we close the session, Jenny?
Um, any final thoughts? No, I just am really excited about this, and also it's fun to watch myself paint. It's like, oh wow, look at me go. And yeah, I appreciate all of the kind comments too. So, ooh, and asking for a portrait class. I mean, this is a portrait. It's missing the skin.
Oh,
So
yeah, I just missed one question. Jenny has watercolor artwork. Yes, she does have a watercolor works too. So you might want to check out her Instagram. I'm flashing it right here on the screen. And yeah, with that being said, thank you so much, Jenny, again for that lovely and fun demonstration. And thank you, everyone, for being so enthusiastic and active in the chat. You guys have been super amazing. And until next time, everyone, make more art. Bye for now.
bye guys.